Basically, I salute you all, and today's topic is under administrative law, and we shall look at delegation, what we call delegation. So basically, in the layman's understanding, delegation can mean a process by which the powers, functions, and responsibilities of a superior officer are performed by a subordinate officer. That is the clear and the good definition of what we call delegation. And here under where the provisions, we see that there are many ways whereby delegation is carried out. When we move further, we have the delegation of administrative powers in general. It is when you say we have three categories. We have a legal provision, we have administrative instructions, and we have what they call terms of the contract. Those are some of the ways how delegation can be carried out. You get under legal provision, under administrative instructions, and under terms of of a contract. Basically, the delegation, we shall see some of the what they call delegated legislation. And to move further, we shall see section 14 of the Interpretation Act. When you read section 14 of the Interpretation Act, section 14 of the Interpretation Act provides that where any law confers on the president, minister, or any other authority of power to make it can be subsidiary legislation. Such power can be exercised by making statutory instructions. You get, even if it is a president or any other authority, he has been given power to make subsidiary legislation. Such power can be exercised by making statutory instructions. So we have also section 16. When you read section 16, for it provides that any statutory instrument shall be published in the Gazette and shall be judicially noted. You get, it is in line with section 14 of the Interpretation Act. They move hand in hand. And some of the reasons as to why delegation is carried out, these are some of the key reasons as to why delegation is carried out. One of it is for effective distribution of the workload. Sometimes you realize that you cannot work on your own, but however you have to bring in other people to help you. So you delegate some powers or services. Then we have for personnel development. Realize once they don't delegate something to you, realize that you as a person, you cannot develop, basically. Then we have what promotes staff morale. Sometimes realize that when you're at the place of work, at least the place of work, someone can delegate to you what do they mean? Can delegate a certain duty or responsibility. It brings that morale to you, say, now boss can trust me. So it brings what they call staff morale. It also raises level of efficiency in handling, executing policies or anything else. What do I mean the high raises level of efficiency? Realize some delegation is necessary. Realize that sometimes it is not always that area of expertise to the person that has delegated. So he delegates that responsibility to someone of great expertise. You get, the good example is where the president appoints ministers. You get, so let me give an example of an Attorney General. Realize that an Attorney General is a government lawyer, but the president sometimes he could be even a military commander. He doesn't know what the law says. So delegating that role to another person, implies that the level of efficiency is high. Then it also promotes accountability and transparency. What do I mean transparency? Transparency creates that everybody must get involved in a certain duty. So that is the transparency, mostly in public officers. And accountability is that sometimes realize that things are moving on very well. Those are some of the key reasons as to why delegation is carried out. So we also have what they call chain of command under delegation. What do they mean by chain of command? Chain of command, basically here they are trying to imply that we must move in, can I call it in ascending order? Okay, in ascending order. Let me give an example of an institution, a university. You get, if I'm to use a university and it is the academic registrar, wants to pass a communication in a law class of LLB2. Basically, the academic registrar will pass the communication to the faculty dean. The faculty dean may pass the communication to the faculty coordinator, and the faculty coordinator may pass the communication to the lecturer responsible for that particular class. So what do I mean the chain of command? That is the chain of command that I've talked about. But the AR cannot just say, let me call the faculty dean of the faculty of what? Computer science, or faculty of what? Medicine. It is all health sciences. Realize that that is not what? That is not the chain of command. So when related to the case, there's a case of Johnson versus Butterworth. Jackson versus Butterworth. In the case of Jackson versus Butterworth, realize that here the court held that it emphasized that delegation should be exercised by the transfer of power to civil servants within the ministry and not other ministers or local authority. You get, that was in the case of Jackson versus Butterworth. So when you move ahead and how delegation can be effected, or how delegation can be carried out. First of all, it can be carried out by statutory notices. What do I mean by statutory notices? When you read statutory notices, that is the law. There is section 2 of the Transfer of Powers and Duties Act, section 2, and section 29 of the Local Government Act. Those ones back up the statutory notices. Then we have by circulars. What do I mean by a circular? A circular normally works in the department of staff member, even the people working on particular jobs. Realize that some delegation is done through circulars. We have also duty instructions. Automatically someone can instruct you from there and then. That is what they call duty instructions. So that is how some of the ways how delegation can be effected. Then we have what they call control of delegated powers. Control of delegated powers. How can the delegated powers be controlled? You get? And one of the major principles that must be on your mind, or what must come to your mind once you hear the control of delegated powers, is the principle delegatus non protest delegatari. Delegatus non protest delegatari. I'm not good in those Latin words, but which means that a delegatee cannot delegate. You get? A delegatee cannot delegate. Once they delegate certain powers to you, you are also not entitled to do to delegate those powers to someone else. I'll back it with the case of Vine versus the National Dock Labor Board. Vine versus the National Dock Labor Board of 1957. Under this case, it is where a registered dock worker was dismissed. The House of Lords granted a declaration that the dismissal was invalid because the board, instead of declaring itself, it entrusted the matter to the disciplinary committee. The board was the one responsible to dismiss, but it entrusted the powers to the disciplinary committee. And yet the board, the duties were also delegated to it. So its dismissal was declared His dismissal was declared invalid. That is one of the factors for control, one of the controls for delegated powers. Another one is what they call statutory prohibition. Statutory prohibition, this is where the statute prohibits someone to delegate. it prohibits someone to delegate. I'll use Section 75 of the Local Government Act. Section 75 of the Local Government Acts, it mandates that a minister may lay statutory instruments and with approval of cabinet amend, replace or revoke any other schedules provided under this act of the Local Government Act. And it laments that, and this minister shall not have powers to delegate this what? Function, which means he is prohibited by the statute. That's what they call what? Statutory prohibition. Then when you move further, we have what they call delegated legislation or delegated legislation. The other one, we have been seeing delegated what powers? We have what they call delegated legislation, which we are going to see in our discussion. Thank you for listening.